decisions while they're still in high school. So I think we all agree how valuable these types of programs are. And again, this is just another option that provides students with that opportunity. The Youth Skills Training Program, I will refer to it as YST, was passed through legislation in 2017. I started in the fall of 2017, helped develop the program, got the grant funding in place, program approval, and we awarded the first grants in May of 2018. They actually started July 1st of 2018, and it's a 2-year grant cycle. So they're just wrapping up, just finished their third quarter of their first year. So they'll have one more year of their grant funding, and I'll talk about that in a minute. By the way, this program was passed through bipartisan legislation, which I feel like there should be applause or something because we don't hear that very often. So really it's about some very similar things to what Chuck and Les just presented on. It's about creating programs for 16 and 17-year-old student learners to participate in safe and meaningful on-the-job training at employer sites. So you're providing that classroom instruction, and then you're also getting them out into that paid work experience to really get that real-life work experience and see it firsthand. So what is a student learner? This is based on a federal and state definition. Must be at least 16 years of age, a student of an accredited school, a part-time employee, and they need to earn academic credit as part of this program. So as the woman in the back mentioned, we want these students to either have already taken a class that's going to be related to that work experience, or currently be in a class that's related to it. So they either have to currently be taking one or already have taken one for credit to qualify for this program. Some of the goals for the Youth Skills Training Program, again, it's about supporting creation of local partnerships. This has been mentioned a couple times today. The importance of that it's extremely important. For Youth Skills Training, it has to be a relationship between high schools and employers at minimum, but it can include other partners, chambers of commerce, workforce groups, nonprofit organization, post-secondary institutions. And those have been very valuable in these youth skills training programs because it's not going to be very effective if you add it on to a principal's job or a counselor's job. You really need someone who's going to be kind of dedicated to this position and have the time and the resources to really support these partnerships and make it happen. It's about introducing students to careers in high growth and high demand industries, preparing students for successful careers, and addressing the need for skilled employees. Luke did an excellent job of talking about exposing students to industries. We need to start that at a very young age. We need to provide these exposure opportunities for students to learn about the various industries and types of jobs that are available to them as they go through their school career. We can't wait until their 10th or 11th grade and then give them that exposure. You need to do it in small doses throughout their educational career. You need to provide those classes, that classroom instruction that's going to be related to these industries. And then finally, you need to provide that experience, that hands-on experience. Yesterday I was at Team Vantage in Forest Lake and did a tour. And I had the opportunity to talk with a couple of students from Forest Lake that are part of a youth skills training program. And it's always interesting to talk to students because they really did a nice job of voicing to me how this program has helped them to make that connection between what they're learning in the classroom and what they could be doing for a career. And that is so important, to give them that experience and to let them see, okay, what I'm learning in the classroom is actually going to apply to a real life job. Very important. The current youth skills training eligible industries include advanced manufacturing, agriculture, automotive, healthcare, and IT. So those are all the industries that I'm currently working with to set up youth skills training programs. This is a statewide program, and I'm a team of one, so I cover the whole state. There are really 4 components of the youth skills training program. Outreach, so I go out and speak to groups like this. I talk to people on the phone, I go and meet with them in person, provide consultation to both business owners, to schools, to those intermediaries that might be helping create these partnerships. We do the program approval. Similar to what Chuck had mentioned, there is an approval process through the Department of Labor and Industry to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to work in industries like manufacturing. We want to make sure that they're going to be safe, be working in a healthy environment, and have a very meaningful experience. And then the final piece is the grant administration. So there is grant money available for programs to implement and create these types of programs, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So what are some of the program requirements? As I mentioned before, it has to be a local partnership between education and employer. Can include other partnerships. Has to be related classroom instruction for high school credit. A paid work experience has to be included. Qualified supervision and safety training needs to take place both in the school setting and at the employer. And based on legislation, at least 80% of the students who participate in a youth skills training program need to graduate, and at least 60% need to receive an industry recognized credential. We definitely want those numbers to be even higher than that. As far as industry credentials go, it's fairly open. It's really up to the employer to help determine what is going to be meaningful to that student or to that group of students. What's going to be something that they're going to walk away with and have that's actually going to hold some weight on their resume or for their future career. A lot of students or a lot of partnerships have used the OSHA 10 certification, and that's completely acceptable. It's 10 hours of safety training that really provides a good, basic knowledge for students, whether they're in manufacturing or healthcare, automotive industry. And there are a number of benefits. I think a lot of these have already been discussed. Really creating those employer and education partnerships, reaching younger students to help fill some of the skills gaps that are out there. It's really important to partner with the employers as an educator, to have them come in and take a look at your curriculum and help give some guidance on what maybe is up to date, what's important for these students, what are kind of the minimum requirements that you'd like them to have when they come into your facility and do a paid internship. And really it's about providing these students with an understanding of the pathways to get from high school student to a career as whatever it is. So that's one of the greatest things that I see is these high school students are really learning, okay, here I am a high school student, I go in and I see a welder, a machinist, an engineer. I find something that I really am interested in, would like to pursue, how do I get there? And that's really part of this program as well, is helping them figure that out. So how can the Department of Labor and Industry help? By supporting local partnerships, providing technical assistance, working with interested partners. We have a lot of guides and models on our website. As part of the program, I was required to do a legislative report that was due February 1st, so a copy of that is on the webpage. I also had to do a program guide. So if you're interested in learning more just about this topic in general, take a look at the Youth Skills Training Guide on the webpage, and hopefully it has some information that may be helpful to you. So as I mentioned, there is grant funding available. As it stands, each year we were able to award 5 grants up to $100,000 to each partnership. And it can be awarded to the employer, to the school, to that intermediary. If it's a chamber of commerce or someone like that involved, they can be the grant recipient. And it's really about coordinating and implementing these types of programs. As I mentioned before, it's a 2-year grant period. What can the money be used for? Marketing and advertising programs, recruiting schools, employers, and students. The employer training. Some of these employers are not maybe ready to bring 16 and 17-year-olds into their facility. So you can use some of the money for training those employees that will be working with these students. The money can be used for student transportation to get them from school to the job site and back if necessary. Staff to coordinate and monitor the program outcomes. So that's a big need. As I mentioned before, you really need to have someone who's going to take on this role, be in charge, so some of the money can go towards a position to develop this program. And finally, student credentials and certifications. So there is a cost associated with actually taking the OSHA 10 certification, so money can be used to pay for that as well. The one thing that funds cannot be used for is to pay for the student wages as part of the internship. Here's a quick map of the partnerships, which I've already talked about. The green dots, probably kind of hard to see from a distance. Green dots are grant applicants for rounds 1 and 2 of the program, and the red dots are the grant recipients for rounds 1 and 2 of youth skills training. So you can see there's a great interest in these types of programs. I think it's awesome that we have multiple ways to get students into these businesses and get that hands-on experience. First round of grant applicants on the left side there talk about how many school districts, the employers, post-secondary institution, other partnerships, and there was a total of $2.38 million requested in grant funding for that first round. I had $500,000 to give out, so obviously the interest significantly outweighs the money that we have. We have gone back to the legislature this session, and we've asked for more funding. It's gone through the House and the Senate. It's part of the governor's bill as well, so I'm very hopeful that we'll have additional money moving forward to fund even more partnerships throughout the state. It's really hard. We had almost 30 for the first round that applied and close to 40 for the second round. So there are a lot of partnerships out there that are very deserving of this money, and I wish I had a lot more to give out, and hopefully that will come to fruition once the session's over here. The second round gives you the numbers. We had even more, 3.1 million requested. The first round grant recipients included Goodhue County Collaborative, which is a collaboration between 7 school districts, and they're looking at all manufacturing. So they've done an awesome job of coordinating that. They have some really big businesses involved, including Red Wing Shoes, Hearth and Home, 3M, Excel. Hutchinson Tiger Path, another fantastic program. They spoke here last year. They are doing manufacturing as well. Twin West is a partnership between 3 high schools, or 3 districts actually, Hopkins, St. Louis Park, and Osseo, and they're doing manufacturing. White Bear Lake Serenity Senior Care is a CNA program. And that one, they're just finishing up, like I said, wrapping up their first year. They have 40 students currently that are going to start clinicals in May. And hopefully all those students will be able to sit for the CNA exam beginning of June. So they're cranking out a lot of CNA students there, which is awesome because that's a big need in this area. And the last one's with Winona's Chamber of Commerce, their REACH initiative. They're working with manufacturers and healthcare facilities as well. The second round grant, which will actually start July 1st of this year, was given to Elk River in manufacturing, Forest Lake manufacturing, and agriculture. ISD 287 is another CNA program. Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council, which is down by Marshall, they are doing manufacturing and healthcare. And Vadnasites Economic Development is a partnership with 3 different districts, and they are doing manufacturing as well. Thank you. So here's a look at the YST estimated student involvement in the first year. So again, it's about exposing as many students as possible to these industries. The grant round 1, which is wrapping up its first year, hopes to expose 2,170 students to these 5 industries. Provide related instruction and safety training to 670 students. have 301 students receive industry recognized credentials, and provide paid work experience to 240 students. The estimate for round 2, again, which hasn't started yet, will start July 1. You can see the numbers there. So over those 2 grant rounds, we hope to have 5,740 students with exposure experiences, 1,460 with related instruction and safety training, 563 with industry recognized credentials, and 432 with paid work experience. So please take a look at the web page if you have information. I'm pretty accessible. Call, email if there's anything I can do to help out with your partnership. If you have questions about grant funding. The new round will start in the fall, so there will be information coming out right away in the fall if you're interested in applying for one of the grants. But I'd be more than happy to share more information with you about that if you have questions. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Can you explain like Elk River, how they didn't receive first round and what they did to
Absolutely. So Elk River is a perfect example of a program that applied for grant funding the first round, did not receive that grant funding, but they went ahead and went through the program approval process. So they were approved through Department of Labor and Industry. They started having students work. They were approved. They had students working in paid internships, and then they actually did get the grant the second round. So anytime programs can kind of show that they're moving on that path, making progress, it's obviously a very competitive process. Hopefully it'll be less competitive with more money, but they were able to do that.
You had mentioned that it's really important for students to learn about this before 10th grade, but a lot of our schools have dropped SHOP or any of those kinds of programs, so they're not getting that exposure. So any ideas on that?
You know, it's really starting to come back. I'm happy to say that there are more and more of these programs that are resurfacing throughout the state. So that's one thing. I would also say to get these kids out into manufacturing, into healthcare, whatever it is, on tours, have speakers come in. You know, there's a lot of ways that you can expose students to industries without necessarily having a class at that age. But good question. Any other questions? Thank you. I'll be around for a little while if anyone has questions.
All right, thank you again to Rich. Next, moving on, we're going to have Della Ludwig, Workforce Strategy Consultant with DEED, speak to you about exploring potential interests in careers, which is called EPIC.
Morning, everyone. I am Della Ludwig. I always say Della with DEED, Department of Employment Economic Development. I am a workforce strategy consultant, and I cover 13 counties in central Minnesota. So I cover all the way from Meeker, Candy, Ohio, which is like Wilmer, Hutchinson, Litchfield, St. Cloud, all the way over to the Wisconsin border. So I have some pretty interesting days sometimes on the road. So what I do is I'm a connector. So I work a lot with the schools, colleges, businesses, as well as organizations, just making sure that we're sharing information and everyone knows what's going on within the state and different programs and grants that are available to you. So I'm going to talk today about EPIC, and again, it's exploring potential interests in careers. This is an event that took place in St. Cloud for Central Minnesota schools, and this was held on February 22nd. So we felt that there was a gap in our community. We knew that there was a lot of different things going on, but we also knew that 60% of the students were planning on going to four-year college, but 70% of the jobs in central Minnesota only needed a high school diploma, maybe a certain certification or skills, but majority of the jobs did not need that four-year degree. We also know unemployment is low, and we're trying to get these students as much skills as possible sooner than later. So how do we introduce these students into the job force earlier? And then we also knew that there was few hands-on activities or career exploration opportunities for students. So we built a group. There was 10 of us on the panel. Les was also on this, representing CMMA and the manufacturing area. And what we did is we looked at what we wanted EPIC to be. So we came up with this name, Exploring Potential Interests and Careers, and we modeled it after Bridges Academy out of CLC, Central Lakes College. They have been doing a very similar program since 2007. And this was a hands-on career exploration event for 10th graders. We took a little road trip up there and decided this is something we really wanted to do for Central Minnesota. And what it is it's hands-on. It's not a job fair. It's not a career fair. People were not standing behind tables handing out flyers. They were not there to recruit. We had businesses working with their competitors, coming up with different types of activities and events for these students to actually partake in. So our mission was to bridge education and industry. So again, talking about the schools and the businesses connecting for youth while contributing to the fulfillment of economic workforce needs. Our goals, again, were to expose students to local careers and the employers, and connect school staff with the employers for follow-up interaction. And connect the employers with the schools and the students, and to develop an event model that builds education with the industry partners in the community. Luke had shown this as well. And again, we just want to make sure that students understand there's no wrong path. There's many different ways to get to the end result, and making sure that they have that information to make those decisions. So we really looked at the Minnesota Department of Education's wheel, I guess you call it, and these 6 career fields. So this is how we decided to run our event in St. Cloud. And we then had business leaders actually run each of these different areas. And so, for example, Les and I were in charge of the engineering manufacturing area. Well, underneath this career field, you can see there's many clusters. So we had another 4 clusters underneath that. So between the 6 career fields, there's 16 clusters or areas for the students to actually go and see at the event. So we brought the businesses in very early and asked them to either partner with us or volunteer at the event or even sponsor the event. We had over 100 businesses that stepped forward in the community and said, yes, absolutely, we want to do this. And this is just an example underneath our career field. Our cluster was engineering, manufacturing, and technology. So we had transportation and construction, manufacturing, and STEM. And these are just a few of the businesses that step forward for each of the different areas. And we had a ton of careers to explore. It's pretty small on there, and it actually goes on into the clusters that we then developed, which was marketing and sales, business, hospitality, law, government, human services, education and training, arts, health sciences, agriculture, and architecture and construction, manufacturing and STEM, and transportation. So on the day of the event, we actually had 24 schools participate in this event, and we had over 2,300 students in the building at St. Cloud Technical Community College. We ran the event from 8:30 in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Schools were there for about 2 hours, and the students, before they came to the event, were instructed to choose at least 2 of the career pathways or career fields to actually go and explore. So we put together a little questionnaire for those students, just so they knew which areas to go into. And it was based off the MCIS form that a lot of schools are already using. And the students chose those 2 or 3 areas, and the schools came at different times. So we constantly had a revolving door of students coming in and leaving. It was a little chaotic, to say the least. But it was almost like Christmas as well. So it was a lot of good, fun energy in the air. And the kids were ecstatic. And obviously it was our first year. There's a lot of things for us to do and to learn. But for the most part, we had 100% success in the event. Here are some of the schools, or actually all of the schools that did attend in the event. And I know Maura is here today. They also participated in the event. With the 24 schools, with the 2,300 students, obviously we had to have some security measures in place. It was held in one building. The technical college at St. Cloud actually had, well, they weren't technically closed, but they moved all of their classes to a different building. So the majority of the people in the building were just the students and the staff assisting with it. So we had 10 people on the steering committee. We raised over $40,000, which we ended up having additional money left over, which was phenomenal that we can use that to roll into next year. We had over 100 businesses step forward and assist with the event. And on top of that, on top of the businesses and their employees that they brought, we had an additional 150 volunteers that also came and assisted to make sure this was a successful event. The sponsors actually stepped forward pretty easily. Les kept saying, don't worry about the money, we'll figure that out. So it was kind of one of those last minute, projects that we worked on. And we didn't have any problem. In fact, up to the day of the event, businesses were still stepping forward, writing checks for the event. So where are we going to go with this? With EPIC, we plan on this being an annual event for Central Minnesota. We're also looking at doing year-round programs with businesses and collaborating with those schools, and working on that rural workforce readiness, possibly taking some of this on the road. And a lot of businesses too are already working on doing some different events. Central Soda's doing an event coming up. I know Sartell's doing something coming up. Just trying to make sure that that communication and that bridge is built between them. And then one thing that's pretty cool is District 742, which is the St. Cloud School Districts. So that's Apollo, St. Cloud Tech, and what's the other one? Those two? Those two. What they're doing is they're actually putting EPIC in place for year-round career exploration. So they are building different types of curriculum for their freshmen to make sure that they are prepared for different types of career readiness. So as they, kind of almost like a Hutchinson or a Levastrom kind of a format where in 9th grade they're kind of looking at the different careers and what kind of aspirations they have, and then kind of building upon that for their high school experience. I'm also working with Hutchinson at this time. They are calling their program, they're going to do something very similar in their community, and theirs is going to be called Ignite Your Future. And that will be for that southern corner area, and they will be inviting schools to that event as well. So I'm here today to see if this is something that is of interest in this area, and if we would want to also build our own little EPIC in this community with the schools in this area. Obviously, it's a long haul for a lot of these schools to commit to go to St. Cloud for that event, and I really feel that this would be a great area for us to also be able to do an event similar to this. I know there's a lot of businesses that are really interested, and I know the schools are as well. It's just a matter of how do we get this moving. So if you guys have any interest in this or have any questions about this event, or how we could move forward with it, definitely let me know. It is something that I would really like to get off and running within the next year. Do you guys have any questions at all for me? Yeah, Becky.
So I see construction on there, but I don't see any plumbing or electricians. Can you?
Yeah, we did everything. So we had, what was it called? Ding Dong for Ding Dong, I think they called it. And so they had an area where the students could actually wire up a doorbell. And if they could get their doorbell to ding, then they got a little ding dong hostess. We did a lot of plumbing. There was a lot of different activities. We had healthcare. I mean, all of those pages that I had showed on here, these were the actual activities, Becky, that we did at our event. So here were the careers that they could actually explore. So you can see on there that we did stuff with marketing, health sciences, law, arts, hospitality and tourism. We did education and training. We had agriculture. We had a cow. We had a cow there. And STEM, so manufacturing and science technology. So then from there, Becky, they could actually choose 2 areas that they wanted to go into, and honestly, nobody was standing there checking to make sure, so a lot of these students actually went to way more than that. But then underneath each of those clusters, they could actually choose from these different activities in all of these different areas what they wanted to do. So lots of different things for the students to do hands-on activities. Again, the businesses weren't there handing out business cards. They weren't there, trying to hire. They were trying to get these students interested into that career, which then obviously, causes more interest and hopefully they pursue that. So lots of different things that was going on that day. We did offer VIP tours as well to people. And again, if that's something that for next year, if you were interested in doing, we definitely could set that up for you to be able to come and check that out. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Bridges Academies over at CLC too. They do this every year, and that's the model we use to put this in place for us. Mm-hmm.
Did you have to be invited to that, or did your high school just attend? If we don't have one in this region, can we go to the same club?
Yes, we invited 40 school districts to it, and 24 of those school districts came. What we did at first is we looked at, okay, we have 40 schools that we potentially invited. So we limited the number of students at first to 60% of their grade, so we went over that 2,500. After we knew that it wasn't going to be 40 schools, that it was only going to be 24 because schools declined or didn't respond or however it may be, then we opened it up and allowed other schools and more students to come.
Is there a specific age group of kids and then when?
Great question. So we focused this event on 10th graders. Yeah, so a lot of schools ended up bringing their entire 10th grade class to the event. Yep, Joe?
No, I just say, on behalf of my technical community college, we would be all in, so whatever
Awesome.
going forward, figure all that out today, but timing and everything, but.
Wonderful.
Similar, we talked about this before, but
Yes.
the school districts that are here, and I've got some staff that probably rolling their eyes right now. They can hate you later, but anyways, we would love to do this. I agree that it's a great event, and there's wonderful examples around the state. We can do this.
Wonderful. Yes, Doc?
Della.
Sorry, Bob.
Good morning, Bob. Call me
Good
whatever.
morning.
We took our kids there, as you know,
Mhm.
and I can tell you, we go to as many events as possible around the state, whether we take 5 kids or 50 kids, if they're interested in it. This was one of the most interactive. When Della talks about it's not just about giving cards out, it's actually alive. They get to experience. The great thing was, for the next few weeks, and even still recently, as we talked with kids about what they're going to do next year, is they're still talking about Epic. So
Great,
nice
that's
work.
good to
I would
hear.
encourage this area to do it.
Absolutely.
So.
Good. Yes, Becky?
I know I shouldn't be, maybe I'm talking too much, but I think I'm the oldest person here. And,
Really?
really, I don't know, I'm 65. Hutchinson last time, and I just think it's really important in case anybody else is worried about this. Rich, I thought you might explain it, because he actually got kind of angry at me because what I said was, well, first of all, I just want to say, I really thought we should never have gotten rid of SHOP. You know, I thought that was a huge mistake, and I understand why there was bipartisan support for all of this progress, because we should never have gotten rid of SHOP, you know. However, I was worried that maybe there'd be all this emphasis on not creating citizens, you know. I said, what about the humanities? What about geography? What about history? What about arts? Because we have to create citizens as well as workers. And I just, so anybody who might have that thought in the back of their head, I just want you to know that the superintendent from Hutchinson said, Becky, Lori, I know you, I've been watching you, and why would you ever think that we would neglect those things? Because yes, not only are we doing them, but we're teaching them now in the same exciting interaction mode that we teach our other classes. So I just want people to be reassured that we're teaching, we're exposing kids to every single opportunity, but we are also making sure they become citizens. So I don't know, is that an important thing to say?
Yes, I think it is very important, so
Okay, because I
thank
didn't
you.
know if there's anybody else like me that worries about that, you know?
All right.
They need to be well-rounded.
All right, so, a small question? All right, Shannon has a small question before we thank
No,
Della.
I was able to attend the Epic event, so thank you for inviting me. That was wonderful, and I highly encourage us to develop something about playtime regionally. And so if we can, you know, Joe and I can work together, and we can partner with the Scales 4590
And so for those of you who've known me for a long time, you'll know that if we can do this in this region, it will be one of my dreams come true for the last, say, 5 or more years. And so please do consider how we might work together to do this here. So I just want to thank Della for her presentation, if we can do that real quick. And then next we are going to take a short break. I would ask that those of you who are on the panel for the next section, if you can kind of meet us up here, we'll get that all organized. And then if you would all kindly sort of reassemble in about 10 minutes. Thank you.